All right, well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our second community meeting on the Blake Street Streetscape Improvement Project. We originally had a community meeting on the 26th of February. We presented a more preliminary design for the project, and I had a nice discussion about it. I got a lot of good input from the people of that meeting, and what we're going to do tonight is show you a kind of more final design for the project, which has undergone a number of changes for a number of reasons. Obviously, the input we got on the February 26th meeting was factored into the design we're going to present tonight. And as you're probably aware, we asked for a portion of the funding for this project through town tax dollars at town meeting, and that warrant article was not approved. However, there are a couple of significant grants that have been applied for that if those do come through, and possibility of using some community preservation money, we can still do quite a bit of nice things on Blake Street, not to the extent that we originally had thought for the project that we proposed at town meeting. So tonight we're going to be discussing with you kind of what the new project looks like. And like I said, that's a combination of input we got at the February 26th meeting and an estimate about how much funding we might be able to get to do this project going forward. Our town planning director, Lori Connors, is here tonight. And when I get done with a brief introduction, she'll be sort of taking you through where the project stands right now. And we have representatives from Beta Group, the engineering firm we've been working with for quite a while now to do the design for this project. And Randy Collins from Beta Group is going to go through some of the visuals of the project kind of thing. So that's kind of why we're here and what we're going to accomplish tonight. Basically, we set up a focus group of town residents to work with Lori and the engineering team over the past number of months on the project. You had representation from the town staff, our DPW director and planning director. We had a number of people from different boards and committees in town and a couple of business owners in the area. And we would meet monthly and get an update from Beta Group as to where the project stood, provide some input, ask some questions. And it's been a good way to get some community input on a monthly basis into the project besides what we're doing with these community meetings here. And you can see who the representatives were in the focus group. These are the major players from Beta Group we've been working with, and Randy Collins is here tonight along with some other members of the group to also make some of the presentation tonight after Lori gets done. As we've been explaining all along, this project was spurred on by the master plan that was completed in 2020. You're probably aware that a major focus of the most recent master plan was on revitalization of the downtown. When we did a number of community meetings and asked residents of the town what they thought the most important things we should concentrate on going forward in Northborough, a lot of feedback came back in terms of improving the appearance of downtown, trying to bring in new kinds of businesses, make it more attractive, and make it more of a gathering spot for people in the community. And we hired a consulting firm to do a master plan for the downtown. That was completed in 2024. And out of that master plan, one area that was highlighted as a major catalyst area where work could begin was the stretch beginning at 4 West Main Street, where our old town hall building is, all the way down Blake to Pierce. The fire station, which is going to become vacated when the new fire station is complete, heading in north on Pierce Street, in a southerly direction down at the corner of Hudson Street, the War Memorial Park, and the municipal parking lot down there were all areas that the consultant said were a prime spot where revitalization could happen, and that would be kind of off the main Route 20 corridor kind of thing. So that kind of led us to thinking about Blake Street as a good place to start, and the project we'll discuss tonight. Just to bring you up to speed again, if you look at this picture on the left-hand side from the bottom, that's Route 20 or Main Street. The bottom is on the east side. As you head up to the top, you're heading in a westerly direction. Then you can see the shaded area is Blake, going north of Route 20 up to Pierce Street. You can see at the end of that, and you can see the shaded area coming down to the east a little bit, and that takes you down to the municipal parking in the War Memorial Park that's down there. So the basic focus of the project we've been discussing and working on all along is this particular part of town. Blake Street, in Pierce down to the War Memorial and the parking at the corner of Hudson. These are the goals that had been set out for the project at the beginning, and these have been modified a little bit once again with the fact that we weren't able to get all of the funding to do the entire project. And Lori will be talking to you tonight about the difference between the original project and what the project looks like right now. But there were a lot of different things we could try to accomplish here. As far as, we've always felt that if we could improve the appearance of the downtown, especially this Blake Street area, that could attract people to be interested in coming in and setting up new businesses and getting more involved in the town of Northborough. Parking, we found, especially in the revised plan now, it's really not able to do a lot of increased parking, but we can do better handicap parking. We can make the parking stand out more. We can provide better signage to show people where the parking is, kind of thing. So we can still improve the parking to a certain extent. There's a lot we can do with the grant funding if it comes through, as far as enhancing sidewalks and crosswalks and public safety. And the same thing about beautifying downtown. Climate change and stormwater management are all aspects of the project that can still be accomplished with the grant funding that's been requested. So a lot of what we originally proposed is possible, but not all of it, kind of thing. So that's kind of generally where we are right now. We really appreciate you coming out tonight. I'm going to bring Lori up, and she's going to start to take you through kind of the new project and where we're going with it. Thanks.
Do we have a pointer? It's on here. Center budget? All right. So once again, my name is Laurie Connors. I'm the Northborough Planning Director, for those of you who may have missed our other presentations. So this is the image that was presented to you folks at our first community outreach workshop on February 26th. So it may look familiar to you. And some of the improvements that we were proposing are significant improvements to the Pocket Park, or the Christmas Tree Park, at the corner of Route 20 and Blake Street. Those improvements were to include a new pedestrian plaza with a pergola, enhanced seating, a seating wall, an enhanced area around the flagpole. There we go. Some additional landscaping, maintaining several of the existing trees in that Pocket Park. We were interested in improving the perpendicular parking on Blake Street, creating a one-way entrance so it would be more diagonal parking. Also including drainage in that area. I'm sure many of you who have tried to park in that parking lot see that there's a large puddle through many weeks of the year, and that is because there is no drainage currently. We wanted to reconfigure the large municipal parking lot to make it more efficient. We wanted to provide narrowed driveway openings and some vegetated islands that would provide rain gardens to treat the stormwater flow, as well as some new street trees. We wanted to replace the existing, I'm not doing very good with this thing, so. We wanted to replace the existing asphalt sidewalk on the west side of Blake Street with a new concrete sidewalk with vertical granite curb. We wanted to add a sidewalk to the east side of Blake Street, where currently there is none. And then we also wanted to put a sidewalk on Pierce Street. There's no sidewalk currently that connects Blake Street to the War Memorial Park on Pierce Street. Improvements to the municipal parking lot associated with the War Memorial Park, 5 new street trees, as well as an ADA accessible sidewalk connection to Hudson Street. So that was the plan. And of course, we've had mixed success obtaining the funding for construction. So the original estimated cost of those improvements was $2.1 million. Funding activities to date is we did apply for an economic development earmark of $30,000 that was awarded. I applied for an MVP action grant in the amount of $756,000. The bulk of that money would be spent on Blake Street improvements, and that grant primarily deals with ameliorating climate change. So a lot of what they wanted to fund is the drainage improvements, the street trees, enhanced plantings, removal of impervious surface, and replacing that with landscaping, essentially. So I submitted that grant application in early April, and I anticipate hearing this month, or next month, July. I also submitted a Complete Streets construction grant in the amount of $500,000. The bulk of that money would go towards the Pierce Street improvements. However, I did apply for some funding for the decorative lighting on Blake Street. So that application was also submitted in April, and notification is expected in July or August. And then, of course, we did submit a warrant article for $1.1 million, as Rick had mentioned. Unfortunately, that article was not successful. On the night of the town meeting vote, we did reduce our ask to approximately $750,000 and change, but that didn't go over so well. So that article was defeated. It would have been a majority vote, and it failed to get the majority. It was 145 to 67. So we did listen carefully to the feedback that people supplied when that article was being debated on town meeting floor. There were a number of positive comments. Some of the negative comments were also somewhat positive. So a common comment that we heard is, this is a want, not a need, and this is a good project, but there were concerns because we're facing a Proposition 2.5 override within the next couple of years. So the concern was, let's not go forward now. So what does that mean for this project? We don't give up that easy. So, as I mentioned, we had already submitted a couple of grant applications. So the focus group, staff, beta group, we all got together, and what we decided to do is to reduce the scope of the project by approximately $800,000. So it would tally the amount of the grants that we had applied for. So that brought us to about $1.2 million. So, of course, we are already under contract with the beta group. We signed a contract for $250,000 to design this project. So we are going to fulfill the obligation of our contract and design this project and hope for the best. So we are interested in proceeding with construction of the reduced scope in spring 2026 if our grant applications are successful, or even if they're only partially successful. So if, for example, we only get funding for the Pierce Street project, then we will proceed with the Pierce Street project alone, and then hope to find funding for the Blake Street project using other resources. So if the MVP action grant, so that one primarily would pay for the Blake Street improvements, if that is not awarded, we were thinking that we would want to submit an application for Community Preservation Act funds. So our competition is only in the realm of open space, historic preservation, and affordable housing. That's the only thing that these funds can be used for. Of course, we would go back to town meeting next spring to see if the townspeople want to fund that project. what we would be looking for that pool of money to pay for is improvements to the park on the corner of Route 20 and Blake Street, as well as the municipal parking lot. We really feel that it is a need to address the significant drainage problem in that area, so that would be included. So if the Complete Streets construction grant is not awarded or partially funded, we plan to reapply. So the Complete Streets grant has 2 funding rounds per year. So they have a springtime funding round, and then they have a fall funding round. So it's not unusual not to get funding the first time you ask for it, but then get funding the second time you ask for it. So that's part of the game. So if we don't get funded this time, we'll just apply again. And then another possibility is there is another grant that has a deadline of January 2026, which pays for similar improvements. So it's capped at $250,000, so it's not a big pool of money, but we could definitely do some improvements on Blake Street if we were able to get that funding. So once again, our goal is to proceed with the project in whatever realm that it is funded. Just so you know, grants do have deadlines within which a project must be constructed. So it depends on which grant it is. Sometimes it's a 2-year time frame, sometimes it's a 1-year time frame, but we will act within the deadline that is provided to us. So this is the modified project scope. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Randy, and he's going to walk us through this part of the project.
Thank you, Laurie. Randy Collins with Beta Group, landscape architect who worked very closely with the town and the team to get us to this point. What I'd like to start out by doing is walking you through what is in the project now, assuming that the funding comes in as Laurie laid out. I can get it going, Laurie. So anyway, so there's been a number of significant changes. One of the most significant is the sidewalk along the east side of Blake Street has been taken out. And that really was one of the important components of the project, but when dealing with the financial constraints, that was something that we felt would be something that could possibly be added in at a later date. But the sidewalk on the west side of Blake is being redone in its entirety from Route 20 over to Pierce. The sidewalk along the south side of Pierce is being added into the project, so that gives us a connection from Blake Street across the crosswalk along Pierce to the municipal parking lot and to the War Memorial Park as well. The Pocket Park improvements are also included, so there's the pergola, the plantings, lights, benches, and those types of things are part of the project. There will be ornamental lights along the west side of Blake Street. You're seeing that the parking lot and Blake Street and Pierce Street are all shown as if they're being new, being redone. And the project won't be paying for that, but the town is going to look to pay for those improvements through some of their existing on-call contracts with paving contractors and such, with the one exception that this section of the parking would get redone as part of the project. Adding in street trees as well, here and over at the municipal parking lot, and again, the ADA accessible sidewalk and benches within the War Memorial would also be included. So what could that look like? So this is a rendering of what those improvements could look like. So here is that parking lot. Route 20 is down here. Pierce is up here. So you can see new sidewalks on this side. There will be new sidewalks on the east side from the Pocket Park all the way out to Route 20. Proposed landscaping improvements, the pergola with enhanced seating, some bike racks and trash receptacles, and ornamental lighting. Here's another more person's eye view of that. So here's an ornamental light, and I'm going to get into the details of those in just a minute. Another ornamental light, benches and seating under the pergola. Trash receptacles, the pergola seating, sidewalks, crosswalks are part of the project. This is a view from under the pergola, looking out towards Blake Street. You can see ornamental light, and we're going to investigate the possibilities of having hanging baskets, banners on them, and other ways that we can use the light poles to help enhance the Blake Street corridor. So this is sort of at 4 Main, looking at the municipal parking lot. You see some ornamental lights there as well. And then this is out at Pierce looking back. So you can see we are putting in sidewalks at the intersection of Blake and Pierce, and these would go up to the War Memorial and the municipal parking lot. And we have the sidewalk that goes from Pierce all the way down on the west side of Blake all the way to Route 20. And yet another view, this view is also indicating opportunities to do stormwater management with things such as rain gardens and other low-impact design elements for dealing with stormwater. So that was an important part of the project that we're maintaining as well. Not as robust under the original design, but still a component of the project that we think is important. And this is out at the Memorial Park. So one of the things that we talked about at the first community meeting was ornamental lights and other site amenities. And we had a poll where we showed the group that had gathered a number of different images of different benches and different bike racks and ornamental lights. And just to poll what kinds of things were their mind was drawn to. But when we do streetscape projects, the other thing that we like to do is to look back at historic photographs for any indications of what lights were there before. And it's kind of hard to see, but there's a light right there. And that's probably the same light right there. And so we looked at that light, and it's very much got a colonial style. It's got the ladder rests just below the light itself. It's got sort of the chimney where if it was likely a gas light, it was able to vent out. And it really has a very colonial style. One of the things that we like to take into consideration is, in looking at that light, how appropriate it would be for today. So if you were to look at the buildings that are out there today, you don't really see that colonial style. So one of the things that we started debating was, would it make sense to do that colonial style, or would it make sense to use it as a starting point to think about what the light could be, but something that might be a little more modern and really maybe matching the character of the corridor, Blake Street, better than a real sort of a colonial light. So what we're looking at is something that starts to take some general cues from more of a older light, but with maybe a little more modern flair. So this light pole is about 14 feet to the light source, maybe a little more than that. We're looking at the possibility of having hanging baskets, banners on the lights. The style is something that is not super strong in its character, demanding attention. Like putting in a colonial light out there now would really sort of bring attention to it because it would seem slightly out of place given the context of the buildings that surround it today. But is really something that has a relatively simplistic, straightforward style that has all the attributes of a light that you'd like to have today with dealing with night skies and not illuminating upwards, throwing all the light down, and dealing with LED lighting that is a much more advanced way of getting the light to spread out to all the places that you want it to be. And given the reduced nature of the budget, we're asking the lights that are going to be part of the project to do a lot more than if we had the larger project. And so looking at LED and how they could help facilitate getting the maximum amount of lighting out on the sidewalk and the streets to help with safety was important. So then we looked at the other elements, bike racks, benches, and the arbor. And again, without sort of a strong character tying those features to like a colonial light or Victorian light, one of the things that we started to think about was setting a standard for the town itself as it relates to selecting those kind of amenities. And so what we thought might make a lot of sense, given the new work that has been done down at the Common, is to look at those features and really see how they may match in with the light that we're suggesting. And we feel like it's a pretty good match. They would be black in color, so that's a pretty easy compatibility approach to take. But in looking at the style, it really seems to work well together, looking at the bench, say, without a back or with a back, a bike rack, and then looking at the trash receptacles and also the arbor, the trellis, and really thinking about how it makes a lot of sense to have that match what is down at the Commons. I believe this is your slide, Laurie.
Yeah, so just to kind of sum up the budget. So, of course, the design and the preparation of the bid docs, we've already received the funding for that. That cost is $214,000 and change. Construction is estimated at $1,256,000. Construction oversight is estimated at $75,000. So that would be the beta group to oversee the contractor, make sure that they're adhering to the design plan, answering any questions that they might have. So the bulk of that money's already been secured, $65,180. So we have a shortfall of about $10,000 for that. So the total estimated project costs are $1.5 million. That includes the design. So the balance of the money that has not yet been raised is $1,265,820. So once again, grants we've already applied for: $500,000 Complete Streets grant, $756,000 MVP grant. So that totals $1,256,000. So like I said, we got about $10,000 shortfall. So we have some other potential sources: CPA funds, Shared Street and Spaces grant, and then there's also a small grant called a hometown grant, which we could apply for as well. So we have options. So project timeline, it varies depending upon funding. So of course, spring, we applied for the grants, we advanced the design, we held the first community outreach workshop, we went to town meeting. So in summer, right here, just started, a week later, we held community workshop number 2. We'll hopefully hear from the grant funders. We'll finalize the design and present the design plans and construction cost estimate to the select board. So that'll probably be in September. Fall, the next step is to finalize bid specifications. Of course, that is assuming we get some grant money. Winter would be procure a construction contractor. So the best time to go out to bid to get the best selection of contractors as well as the most competitive pricing is typically January. So that's the goal. And then we'd be all good to go for a April 15th construction start date, depending upon the weather. Of course, if we get a blizzard in the middle of April, then that's not going to happen. If the funding is unsuccessful, that would delay the project a year at least. So then it's just thanks for listening, and happy to hear your feedback. I'm going to actually go back to the design so you folks can comment on that if you'd like. I've got a microphone here. I've been instructed that I must make you talk into it because we're taping this, and we want the folks at home to be able to hear your questions and the answers. So do I have any volunteers? Anybody who wants to speak? All right.
Make sure you press the on button.
Do I need to?
You just talk into it.
So for the grant funding, is it likely that we might, is it only all or none for each grant, or might we get some of any one?
We could get some. So the way the Complete Streets grant works is they make you apply to it in the same way that your project appears on the prioritization plan. So the Blake Street project appeared as project number 12 on the prioritization plan, and the Pierce Street project appeared on the prioritization plan as number 1. So it's possible that they will fund one project and not the other. They could fund both of them. If they do fund both of them, it's likely we will ask to revise the Blake Street project, because originally I had just asked for decorative street lighting. So I had asked for 10 decorative street lights. If now we don't have funding for the Blake Street project sidewalk on the west side of Blake Street. So what I would ask for is to reduce the number of streetlights that would be funded and to fund that concrete sidewalk with the granite curb. So that should be about the same price as what I asked for Blake Street under the Complete Streets grant.
Okay, but they wouldn't come back with a number if they rejected that amount.
So if they reject altogether, that is also a possibility. Then they'll just say, sorry, we decided not to fund your project. Sorry, we decided not to fund your project, and then we can either apply again the following year. So they do give you notes if you ask for it. So I would have the opportunity to sit down with the funder to find out why they didn't fund our project. Sometimes it's a matter of, well, they got 300 applications and they could only fund 20. So it was a great project. We want to fund the project, but we can't do it this year because there's another project that they like better. So it'll be really important to have that communication with the funder. The Complete Streets grant, every community that's a Complete Streets community is eligible for up to $500,000 within a 4-year time frame. So we're not really competing against other communities so much for this money. So I'm feeling pretty confident about the Complete Streets grant, or at least part of it.
Do I have to say my name or no? Okay, Susie Sislicka. I'm on the zoning board, but I'm not speaking on behalf of the zoning board. I'm also on Community Affairs Committee, so I do have some questions on that. However, seeing your plan, I do have some questions. Blake Street is a one-way, but I see that there was arrows going 2 ways. Are we going to be changing Blake Street to be a 2-way street?
So Blake Street currently is two-way with the
Okay.
exception of right here. So it's really the way the traffic flow is going to be the same.
Okay. Because it is a little confusing.
It is a little confusing.
Yeah. Okay. And then, I never knew that. So, that's very confusing.
We're going to try to make it a little less confusing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then Pierce Street, because I never drive down Pierce Street because Blake Street is one way only right there, which is confusing to me. So Pierce Street is basically is it just private homes?
No.
Anyone? No?
Yeah, so when you go in this direction on Pierce.
Yeah,
this
that's
wraps
the
back
fire
around
station.
Fire station.
Yeah.
And then there's this section of Pierce, so it goes up to the Memorial and then to Hudson Street.
Yeah.
There,
But like the middle section, yeah.
yeah.
Food pantry is right there.
Yeah, I go to the red light therapy. Okay. I'm sorry, I just can't get over that it's like only one way right there. And then have you considered, because the makeup of the focus group was like, there was no like I feel like somebody from my committee should be on there because we plan events right there. And there was like nobody with like, I didn't see anybody that had kids. And there's like, that is a gathering space. I don't know if anyone goes there like after school. If you go there on a half day, it's like, and I have a middle schooler, and middle schoolers are very dangerous and they're super annoying. And I'm about to have 2 middle schoolers. So if you have a middle schooler, they're super annoying. They're super dangerous. I love my middle schoolers to death, but they are, and they hang out in that pocket park. And with the pergola there, I mean, I'm just going to express again, I think it's dangerous, but there's also the railroad tracks right there. Have we considered putting a fence?
We have,
There?
I neglected to mention that, so
Yeah.
I'm going to go, so you can see there's a fence
Yeah.
along there. And so one of the things that we do in the very early stages of a project before we even start to design it is to spend time at the project.
Yeah.
And so we try to do that at a number of different times of days so we can get a full sense. You know, we'll also do traffic counts and other things. So I've been out, and I know other members of the team have been out and have seen sort of the activities that go along there. And that really drove a lot of the design decisions. So there's that wall that's there currently.
Yeah.
If the kids sort of climb over, sometimes they sit on it, and it's not necessarily the best wall for that. It's sort of a dry-laid stone wall, and so it's falling apart in places. So when we started to make decisions about benches and those kinds of details, we wanted to make sure that they could withstand the wear and tear of a dangerous middle schooler. And so mine are a little beyond that time frame, but I know what you're talking about. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is also to make sure that it was something that would be compatible with their use, but also encourage other age groups to use it as well. And so that's why something like the pergola, trying to create a place for shade, giving it a sense of place with a vertical design element, not just sort of benches and other things, really was part of what drove the decisions there.
July 7th, the half-day schedule is going to be released for the next school year. So if you go on a half-day, when you'll see, like in September, because there's like a slew of half-days that'll come out, check it out. Because like that's when they all come and they all go downtown and they go to like Cumbies and they go to CVS, and their other stop is like Northborough House of Pizza, and that's where they congregate and they end up there. So that's
Good that
where,
they're spending money downtown.
yeah, oh yeah, they're the biggest spenders down there. So I just wanted to like bring that up. I might come back. I had another question, but that was my biggest thing, is like, because the kids go there and I wanted to make sure that the fence stays, because I know the design will change and everything, but like they go there, like that's where they go, and they are like dangerous, and they don't think at all, like at all. And then the traffic flow confused me.
I have a middle schooler as well, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And there was a lot of discussion about having a place that accommodates the middle school kids, because they should have a place to hang out. So it would be cool for them and others as well.
Lisa Martin. Do I need to say my address or no? Okay. The question that I had is, with the switch in the parking spaces from angled to straight, is there any change in the number of parking spaces with this redesign?
No, I didn't know that one off the top of my head, so I asked Darshan.
Total under January, total number of spaces will be same, 45 for the whole lot.
Yeah, we really did struggle with finding a way to accommodate additional parking spaces. And we were challenged by, on the west side of Blake Street, all the driveway openings really limits what you can do. And then, of course, there aren't going to be modifications to the 10 and 14 Blake Street parking lots as part of this project. They may do those improvements on their own. So we just couldn't find any additional space without eating into the park. Anybody else?
Terry Underwood. I also belong to the Cultural Council, but I'm not speaking on behalf of the council. I look around the room and I see a lot of volunteers, so I'm glad to see that the room is full as it is. I'm wondering if the parking spaces that are shown there, are those all part of the town, or are they also private as part of some of the businesses there?
So these parking spaces you're talking about?
I
Or
guess
any of
all of
them.
them.
So, yeah, all of these are part of the towns, and this is parking for the town as well.
So the ones that are, and I'm looking at the diagram and I know there's the dog business and then there's Fatouche, the
Fatouche,
restaurant.
the dog business, right there.
Where is their parking
Their
specifically?
parking is within that sort of shaded area, if you will.
Okay.
So, and they've got the parking that is sort of pull in off of Blake Street over here. So all of the parking that they have is untouched.
Okay. But really, anybody can come in and drive wherever they want because, so I've lived here for a couple of decades and I've seen a lot of changes, and I hope that part of the Cultural Council and maybe some of the other groups here that we can pool our resources together to resolve some of these problems so that Lori, if you could, keep us on a Rolodex, because I'm sure over time there will be different groups that will be able to lend their expertise, maybe grant funding, maybe something that we can work cooperatively here. On the Cultural Council, I've shared with you, and it's public, that we have ARPA money that we've received and looking forward to do things. So I'm not saying that's where we'll be able to do something, but I just, am speaking to everyone here and whoever sees this, that there are opportunities, whether you know it or not, that maybe a bench, maybe somebody can dedicate a bench, maybe if there's something where we can all be invested in this to make it happen. Because yes, whether it's middle schoolers or walking downtown for the local businesses, how can we support? The Cultural Council has been very involved trying to create events and connect different groups, artists, the businesses, to try and create that hum of, hey, we're all working together.
Yes. Well, one thing that we've been talking about quite a bit with the Master Plan Implementation Committee, we do have Cultural Council representation there. And on the focus group is how can we incorporate art as part of this project, particularly where that Pocket Park is at the corner of Route 20 and Blake. And one of the ideas that we've been kicking around is metal screens, kind of like if any of you have been at Tower Hill Botanical Garden, they have these lovely screens. So we've been talking about how we could incorporate those into the design. And so super excited to work with the Cultural Council to figure out how we can make that happen and hear your creative ideas for how we can make that happen. So anybody else? I'm going to go over first hand.
Thank you.
Norm Corbin, could you bring up the slide with your numbers, your budgets, and your expenses? Because it's not clear to me. I'd like to have a better handle on what those numbers are.
You're talking about the one at the very end.
Yeah, that one. So, walk me through that again. You already have some funding that's been secured, and then you have the construction cost, and then you have oversight. So I'm looking at the total cost is 1.5 million, and when you subtract out the 280, which is secured, it's the balance due is 1.3 million, roughly, right? So then I go to the bottom, and you could, with everything goes well, you have a $500,000 grant, and then another $756,000 grant. So that's 1.3 million, right? So there's very little money that you need from the town. Am I reading this correctly?
That is on purpose. Yeah. So what we heard is at town meeting was a clear message saying you're not going to get any municipal appropriation for this project. So it sounded pretty resounding, and when we spoke amongst ourselves, none of us wanted to go to town meeting next year with another request. So the only option that we felt safe with going forward with was that CPA funding. So if we are successful in getting all the grant funds that we requested, then chances are we won't need any municipal funds. We got about $10,000 shortfall. There is the paving of the municipal parking lot that would be, DPW would include it within their budget. So there would be, but that would be from another source. It'd be possibly Chapter 90 funds. You know, they have their own sources of funding. The $10,000 shortfall, probably between DPW and planning budgets, we could cover that. So. Do you have an idea of what you're requesting for CPA funding? I will know better when I hear back from those grants. Yeah. That's the fill-in. So the CPA funding is a kind of worst-case scenario. We didn't get funding, either one or both of the grants, so now we're looking for a plan B.
So I did have a quick question on the, do you have an estimate of how much that paving would be?
I don't. Scott felt pretty confident that he'd be able to find money. He would have to get a quote from his paving contractor. Oh, sorry, I'm getting yelled at. Sorry. So Scott felt pretty confident that he would have the means of paying for that parking lot. However, he would have to get a quote from his paving contractor to know for sure what that amount would be. And we're waiting. We're waiting because, of course, we should hear from those funders within the next couple of months. So if we get no grant money, then we're probably going to bump the project another year at least, and then we're really going to have to put our heads together. Either the project won't proceed at all, or we'll go forward with the Plan B option. So.
Andy Clark. Two questions. One is the failure to pass the funding at town meeting. Does that impact our ability to get the grants? And two, if we you had put them out there, like if we didn't get A, we can do A, or if we didn't get B, we won't do B. Is that built into the budget? Because it would seem that there is the economy of scale or whatever, having equipment in there working on Pierce going over to here. So if we got the funding, I forget which one goes for the Pierce Street, but we couldn't do the one on Blake, does that mean that Pierce goes up in value?
Good questions. So the good thing is Complete Streets grant is federal, MVP grant is state. So they match each other, which is great. The other thing is the MVP grant, what I quoted as a match was in-kind services, as well as some of the labor that we've already secured funding from for design. So like the bid specifications, we had extra money in the ARPA allocation that we have since allocated towards construction oversight. So that also goes towards the match. So we're all set for the MVP grant. The Complete Streets grant does not require a match, although it is recommended. But once again, we have a match because we have $65,000 in construction oversight. So the match, the mandatory match for the MVP grant is 10%. And the Complete Streets, there is no mandatory match. So her first, and I'll come back to you.
Thanks, Lee. Hi, I'm Judy Boyle. I am on the Master Plan Implementation Committee, but I just have a general question. Lori, one of the earlier slides you showed, there was a $30,000 grant, if I remember correctly. Is that part of the secured funding that you're quoting, the 200 and something that's secured? Okay. Okay, thank you.
So yes, that was secured. Actually, I submitted the final report today because all the money had to be spent by today. All right. Did I answer your second question or did I forget it?
No, you did. Well, you insinuated that some of the costs are already split.
They're
already allocated to the different projects. So that
If we have to, your second question was, if we have to split the project over 2 years, does it drive up the costs? Yes, absolutely, because of inflation. So, and even these are cost estimates, so they're not definites. So the reality is when we go out to bid, and sometimes the bids come in lower, so usually they come in higher. Every once in a while they come in right on target. So everybody should anticipate if we have to split the project over 2 years, costs will go up.
I'm going to come back to parking. I want to just bring to everyone's attention here that when we're looking at this project, the positive impact of this parking is not in a silo here. The benefit of this parking is that for all of the functions that we want to attend on the town common, the businesses that we want to visit and should be visiting would rely on this parking. So I guess I'm going to look to you, Lori, if at some point that it would be beneficial to have letters of support, whether it's from individuals, businesses, or the different volunteer groups that are represented here or elsewhere, or people listening, to please let us know, because everyone's going to be impacted by the parking, the park, on so many levels, because at least for all the events that we've had on the town common, where can I park? And, you know, I feel like I'm operating with, you know, like some deep, dark secret, like, oh, you can park over here, but don't tell anybody. You know, poor CVS, you know, these different places, that this has a much wider reach than just a park next to a railroad, more than just for these businesses that touch it. It's much further, and that would create such a positive, welcoming feeling, and start to create that downtown feeling, place and space making that we've all been looking for, and to see it visually depicted here is really helpful.
She's been waiting for a long time. I'll come back to you.
Hi, I'm Doug Stone, and just had a question and then a comment. how many spots is this being reduced from, parking spots from what we have now, if any?
There's no reduction, right? No reduction in parking spots? Overall. No reduction in parking overall.
Yeah, I'd like to see that Blake Street go two-way out to Route 20, like it used to be, and just put a light on Route 20 and let the people out, because it's, like the lady said earlier, it's confusing, you can't get out of there, it can't be good for business.
Yeah, that ship has kind of sailed with the project that created the one-way in. So it's really beyond the scope of this project to be dealing with something like that, unfortunately.
So Mass DOT has control over Route 20, and they're the ones who mandated that one-way in. So it's not up to the town to make it two-way. Mass DOT's decision.
Hi, Lisa Maselli. First off, I want to thank you for doing so much work and redoing the maps and trying to create something that we would like. There's a lot of questions that I have. On the first, on the slides that you show, the renderings, you have one that shows some of the parking coming down from Pierce going into Blake. Right there.
This parking right here?
Yes.
That's existing parking that's out there today.
That parking belongs to the owner of the two properties.
Correct.
So that doesn't necessarily going to stay that way, because leaving it like that for them allows the general public to park on their land.
Which, according to them, happens today, but this project will not impact their parking.
So you're going to bring that back out to where Blake Street is?
No. So this is an existing condition that we're not changing.
Well, then you may not change it, but the owner may. So.
So the owner is interested in changing that. As part of the original project, we were going to change it for them and do a raised sidewalk. But of course, we have to reduce the scope of the project. We have to reduce the cost, so we can no longer afford to do that. So if they want to do it, it's on their dime.
Right. So if they choose not to allow that to happen, that's got to be worked into also your new design change. And I'm assuming there's going to be a time frame that would be set in stone.
Well, we can move forward with the design that is part of the town's project independently from anything that they may want to do.
All right. So then you're not going to put the island with the grass and the trees, you're not going to move them. Whatever's there.
As part of this project, the reduced scope of project, whatever's there is going to remain, correct.
Okay. All right. So, and you have, unfortunately with design work, it doesn't always work to scale. So we have lovely pictures and lovely trees and a lot of things that show a room or a landscape that doesn't really exist. We have railroad tracks, and we have a railroad company that is always working on those railroad tracks. And they leave stacks of their materials for years, months. They're always kind of the harder, it's kind of a mountain to climb to try to get that cleaned up. Even if you put a fence, you're still going to see it because it's a major part of Blake Street. So when we're looking at all of that and going back to where the trees and all of that, the easiest way to start back for me is where the memorial is right now. Putting in a couple of benches over there would be lovely. You already have several trees. I think there's almost 10 trees over there. So that's kind of a nice place to start to put a few benches. So if people do want to sit in that area, and there's a few senior housing units across the street from that. Then you start to walk down Pierce Street to go to Blake. And you've got the railroad tracks that you have to go over, which is going to require a special type of a, I don't know. Sidewalk isn't going to work over the railroad tracks. So
It'll be coordinated with CSX to be able to get a design for that they find acceptable.
And will that be additional money?
Nope, it's included.
Okay. So now we're coming around the corner, going into Blake Street. And what we use Blake Street now mostly for is certainly Applefest, the Rotary Club uses it to put a lot of things in. And once you start to do this, how will that affect that usage?
What usage was that? I'm sorry, I missed
The
that.
Rotary Club has Applefest, or is part of Applefest. They close Blake Street. Does he not know?
So, of course, 4 West Main is out to bid. So there will be discussions with whoever gets 4 West Main on what to do with that large municipal parking lot. But certainly I would recommend, I suggested that the town retain ownership of that municipal parking lot. And there was points added if whoever ends up purchasing or leasing for West Main would allow parking spaces to be used for Applefest. So that really isn't within the scope of this project to determine whether Applefest can still occur there. That's more of a selectman decision with the negotiation of 4 West Main and over that parking lot. So I can't really say, but ideally I'd love to see it still used for Applefest. Oh, that's right.
Thank you. Hi, it's Judy Boyle again, and now I'm speaking as a member of the Youth Commission. So Terry and Hannah's here with the Cultural Council. We're all talking in the background, Youth Commission in connection with Health and Human Services, in connection with Cultural Council. We are so excited about this project and how we can support and fill it in with art therapy. Just there's so many projects that we can do, whether we help with fundraising. So this is just a design, but we're working on the intangibles and, how it's going to come to life. And it's all designed as part of what our Health and Human Services Department is doing, again, in connection with the Youth Commission. Youth Commission certainly has goals for the youth, but HHS is supporting every category in town. So the plans on how to bring this to life beyond the paving, the light posts and everything. So it's just a remarkable project that just needs to go forward.
Mitch Cohen, a member of the Rotary Club that puts on the Applefest Street Fair. We've had some discussions about this project. We're very excited about it. We don't see anything that's in the design that has any long-term impact or concern about having the street fair. Obviously, if the town gives some of that space away to somebody else, we'll have to modify. I would say my preference would be, it would be great if there wasn't any construction going on the weekend of Applefest. The construction is going to happen when it's going to happen. We'll deal with that. Separately, unrelated to the street fair, I also had a minor comment. The traffic that goes towards the right on Blake Street, a lot of people take a left on Pierce, thinking that's the way to get back to Route 20, because a lot of them came from that way. You can't take a left from Pierce onto Church Street to go back to Route 20. Everybody does. And yes, as a frequent pedestrian in that area, because we live around the corner, it gets pretty dangerous. My request would be not to change the design at all, but put in a couple of signs at the end of Pierce that just say Route 20 that way, to the right. And separate from this project, put one down in front of CVS also, because that's where a lot of people come out to go that direction. That would resolve a lot of the traffic issues that occur between Pierce and Church over there. I think that would be helpful. I think it's a great project. I'm glad it's moving forward. Thank you.
I know that there's been talk too about how that street light at the intersection of Pierce and Church will no longer be necessary when the fire station moves. And so then there will be the ability to reconfigure the traffic pattern in that location. So hopefully that can happen.
All right. I did want to ask this before. In putting all these new projects together and looking down the road, I know that there's going to be a maintenance issue. Someone's going to have to maintain it. It's going to have to go in somebody's budget. We've just found that out with the dogs. The dog park is now $50,000 a year they want to put to budget to maintain that. So this is it's also going to need the same kind of maintenance with people coming and cutting grass and whatever. So where is that then going to come from?
So of course, this already is, both of these areas are parks currently. So they're already being maintained by the DPW. We did talk about, because on the focus group, we were talking about enhanced landscaping. So adding flowers, which of course are more challenging for DPW to maintain than what currently exists there, which is just lawn that they mow and some bushes that they trim. So we were talking about, similar to the Common, they have a contract with a landscaper to maintain our gardens. So we were talking about that, and that has been included within the capital plan as an increase to the DPW budget.
Thank you. Diane Reynolds. I've lived in Northborough 40 years. I've had the benefit of walking from both residences through town for years. Regarding the landscaping, I want to say thank you to the Northborough Garden Club for all their enhancements they've done throughout the town for the years, especially the little area in front of the town hall, which is very pleasing to look at when you pull out of South Street. As for what we need in town, I think we need more parking. And I've driven around CVS 3 or 4 times in order to get a space. And I also walk to Sawyer's to go bowling. It's a challenge in the winter because DPW has an awful lot to take care of, and maintaining the sidewalks is something that I would like to see them do better at, and maybe do snow removal. There are times I can't even reach the pedestrian light button in order to push that to get across the street. As for the kids skateboarding in there, my son did the same thing. They do need a place to have activities. And right now, going around the Ellsworth Memorial is what they've been doing. Somebody put a speed bump in there. I think we need speed bumps around Northborough to help curb some of the speeding and on the side streets. And as for Applefest, I used to work Applefest, and it was a great function. However, the police have gone around the surrounding residences, and you can't park on the side streets when you want to come to town to have a function. So I think it's a great idea, and I applaud everybody who's put years of effort in the master plan to add a bright spot in our downtown with 2 or 3 gas stations and repair stations. The town common looks lovely, but you can't find a place to park to enjoy something that's being put on there. So while we're wanting to enhance things, we need to really think about, I don't see much walking traffic in downtown Northborough. If you enhance it so that there's benches and pergolas, maybe people will come and park to sit there, but I really can't see that happening. But again, thank you for everyone for all your effort.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, just a few questions. First, I was just wondering if there's like a more detailed breakdown of the cost estimate for each part of the project? Is that available or something that could be published?
Sure, I have that, and I'd be happy to email that to you or whoever else is interested. If you want to send me an email, I can share that with you. I can also upload it onto the project web page. Just remember, we're still very early in the design, so every time they define the design further, then the costs may shift. So at the time that it's presented to the selectmen, that should be a more final budget. So just keep that in mind.
Sorry, one more thought about safety. The pictures really don't show the true meaning of the railroad tracks, I think. I'm really concerned if we're inviting more people to come to enjoy the area, what can we do to protect them from going onto the railroad tracks or trying to cross them in not a safe area? It is a challenge for everybody on either end of Blake Street to Pierce Street. So I'd like to see a strong fencing or some way to deter that. And I also have been trying to cross Blake Street and had people trying to come out to Route 20. I've had to explain to them how they have to get back out to go around. So enhanced signage there would work. And I also would like to see some real pictures of what the buildings look like. Everything here is all enhanced from the architect's view, and it's beautiful. But when you look at 4 West Main Street and you look at the side of the building and the steps that up there, they're just getting repaired, that's what it really looks like. It's, you know, it's part of that's still going to be there. So how are we going to enhance that along with what we already live with on Route 20? And I noticed after one of the last meetings here, as I walked over there, if you look up above on Route 20 and 135 to see the amount of wires that go across that intersection, it's kind of like we're going from reality of what really downtown Northborough is and has been to what we'd like to see happen. So there's quite a contrast there. So I don't know if you can blend that. I know we can't get rid of the wiring, but that's going to be there. Thank you.
We did discuss burying the utilities. So the $2.1 million budget, add another $1 million on top of that. And so we definitely don't have the budget to do anything with the utilities. There are 3 telephone poles, I believe.
Along Blake Street.
Yeah, so a portion of the utilities are already buried, like at 4 West Main. But I know.
Wires and transformers and everything is up there. And when we had bad weather, I'm thinking, if someone hits a pole there, the whole town is wiped out for a long time.
I agree.
What we've grown through, and I don't want to be negative. I appreciate everybody's effort as we've gone through the hundreds of years of developing Northborough. Things keep changing. I'm sorry. Anyhow, thank you.
Oh, okay. As to your first question about the buildings, so of course the buildings are privately owned, so the town cannot make repairs to those buildings. That's up to the private property owners to make their own repairs, facade improvements, and the like. Right. 4 West Main is owned by the town. Of course, there's an RFP to sell it or lease it, so there's that. But often, streetscape improvements result in inspiring property owners, private property owners, to enhance their buildings. There are many successful examples of that happening. So hopefully this will be the case here. But of course, I can't guarantee it. Carter?
Yeah, just a couple more questions. For the Memorial Park area, the walkway that's doesn't exist now, but it kind of cuts through the middle of that park area. I was just wondering if there was a specific reason why the walkway is cutting through the middle, as opposed to if it was possible to make it go kind of around it. I just know I've seen kind of people use that area as kind of a lawn area. I'm not sure if it's intended to be used that way or not, but that is something that I see people doing with that would not appear to be possible if you were to put a walkway through it. My second question was about you had mentioned the lighting, and you were looking at a few different designs of the lighting. Not that I have any strong opinions on the design of the lighting anyway, but I was just curious. You had mentioned that, you know, the style that looked kind of like the older light in the picture. You said the current buildings around it that would look out of place. But my understanding is, with the exception of two, all of the buildings on Blake Street would have existed at the time of that picture, and the two exceptions are kind of replicating buildings that had previously been there. So I was kind of just curious what, I guess, the thought process there was.
Sure. So going to Memorial Park, we were really interested in getting some benches in there. And so rather than have the benches along the edges, along the roadway, having them interior to the park to give a little more space between people are sitting in the benches and the traffic that's around them was one of the driving forces behind that concept. If you look at the buildings that are there now, and if you start looking at what they looked like in the past, even before the photographs, there's been an evolution and sort of a simplification of the trim work and the detailing on those buildings. So yes, they're the same buildings, but they look very different between today and what they looked like in the past.
Anybody else?
First of all, thank you very much for all of the work. Love this. And somebody brought up the lighting. I am just going to speak out myself. I love the idea of lighting, and I would encourage you to combine the flower baskets and the banners together. I just looked up on my phone a couple of years ago. I was traveling in Juneau, Alaska, and I took pictures of the park. They combine the baskets with the banners, and they celebrate their local culture and events that they have going on, and they're beautiful, brightly colored banners of what's going on, and it's just really nice, and I think it would be unique and just really, really beautiful there. Also, the downward lighting, I'm very conscious about the upward lighting and LED lighting, bright signs, all of that. So with the hooded lighting facing down, I think people would really, I don't know if you have any other pictures of something, people may not understand what that is, but it really does make a huge difference. So you don't feel like you're at, I don't know, a 7-Eleven or something that's really bright. It just is very welcoming.
Yeah, so in this, the light source is up here, and all the light is directed down. And as I was saying earlier, with LEDs, you have much greater control over how that light is distributed from the light source itself down to the ground. So that does help with night sky type of things. Exactly.
So I work for the Southborough TV station there. I would encourage anybody to look up this professor from WPI who's done a lot of work with the town of Southborough, just educating, and now their zoning, planning, they incorporate a lot of those same ideas and forward thinking to help. I mean, there's fewer, people may or may not care, but it's the night bugs, the night life. It just is a lot more welcoming, and it does impact the color, temperature, the lighting. It really does make a big difference. So all of these little details we all get to enjoy.
Right. Yep, and we definitely are paying attention to those.
People just may not understand it yet.
Maybe.
So the education part of it, keep going.
Anybody else? No? All right, well, thank you so much for coming. I know it was a tough ask, it being 4th of July week and a beautiful evening, so really appreciate you all coming out. So as I mentioned, the next thing is the final presentation to the select board. So if you put your names and your email addresses on that list, I will definitely notify you. And of course, the select board meetings are open to the public, so you're welcome to attend and ask questions. They're also held hybrid, so you can attend remotely as well. So thank you.